Yo, so recently I took part in a game jam. We made this game called Sunday. Really cool. You should check it out. I'll leave a link. And basically, the game revolves around a bunch of robots just exploring a kind of dying world. It's our world, and things are just getting hotter, and they're just kind of talking about what happened. What should they be doing? Just generally exploring and stuff. Really cool. Um, So yeah, anyways, I was a sound designer on this project, and one of the more interesting things that came out of it, because I was doing a lot of mech and robot sound design, is this kind of vocal technique that I developed from reading a few articles from Ben Burt on how we made the R2D2 kind of vocalizations, all of the whirs, the hums, and drags whenever R2 needs to respond to something. So I thought, this is pretty cool. This is pretty rad. Let's share it with the world, or at least document it for future me to take note of. So, anyways, this is what you can kind of expect it to sound like. There are four droids in total. Um, One is a baby, one's a mom, and then there's a nice and a mean droid. That's the yeah, so some really expressive stuff. And finally, that's this one. Okay, so first things first, what's important to understand about getting this right is firstly where Ben Bird comes in. And basically, what he did to make R2D2 was a combination of a synthesizer and a vocoder. I'm not using the synthesizer part, I'm just using the vocoding part to some extent, which I will explain. But this is basically the thought process on like what I took away from what he did and how I made it my own thing. Um, so the first thing is that it's important to kind of be very expressive with the source signals that you're trying to make. It doesn't really help to be shy or iffy about it. You kind of just need to be embarrassed, or just let go of your embarrassment and just do it because it's going to be fun and it's going to sound a lot better when you do all of the processing. So my original voice sounds like this. So yeah, not the most flattering thing, but it ends up sounding really cool when you do all of these other processing effects. Um, so yeah, on top of that, when it comes to creating the vocalizations, you also need to be mindful of the kind of character that you want each of the voices to have. So, for instance, for this baby voice, I know this is kind of a childlike droid robot type character, and I need the sounds that it makes to be kind of soft, very emotive, very reactionary to things because it's still like engaging with the world. It's not shy to engage with the world as well. Or I'm just trying to harp on that kind of characteristic of being a child. So, yeah, that comes up. I came up with sounds like this. So yeah, then going through my signal chain, I guess there's kind of like three main things that I was trying to focus on. The first is cleanup, which is always kind of important. I don't think I'll go through each of the individual plugins, maybe just like specific details, because there's probably better people to explain that. But I've got a gate here just to cut out some noise. Then I have an EQ EQ here that's kind of molded towards my voice. I'm just trying to balance out the harshest frequencies that I was picking up and then kind of place it a bit better for what I thought a child might sound like. Then I have a de-esser here by Vocalizations. It's free. Yeah, that's just taming some of like the harsher signal sibilances, all of those harsher frequencies in the higher register. Then I've got a compressor here just so that the dynamic range isn't so dynamic. But also I'm not doing too much with it. As you can see, the ratio is, as it says there, 2.14. The attack isn't the highest ever, kind of mid around there, you know, and the release is also like not too aggressive, not too sharp, or not too slow to react. Okay, and then the kind of meat and potatoes, or like the heavy lifting plugin in all of this, is Manipulator by Polyverse, collaboration with these guys. So as you can see, there's not actually much going on in the plugin that I'm doing here, and that's because I think the way Manipulator works as a kind of pitch shifting vocoder type deal is it has a very kind of specific color or way that it treats signal. So I think it's possible to kind of recreate this with other plugins, but the texture of it probably won't be the same just because of the way that Manipulator treats vocal processing. So on that, for the baby, I tried not to be too wild. I just kind of wanted to set up what my bass kind of parameters were for like getting a good sound were. So all I have here is a pitch shift going up 10 semitones, nothing on the formant, and then you can see there's a sequencer over here. So yeah, with the sequencer, all I was trying to do is get some modulation going for the pitch, thinking that that would just, and Manipulator already gives the processing chain like a lot of, I don't know, it already sounds like pretty robot-like in my ears, and it introduces kind of a lot of other sounds and variances within the sound. So I just wanted the automation to kind of excuse me, accentuate that. So with my sequencer, very simple. The main important function of this is just to get more inflection and variance with the actual processing. Excuse me, something in my throat. So yeah, with the sequencer on, it sounds like this. And I think what's most important is the fact that it's creating an inflection in the voice based on how it modulates the pitch. So as you can see here in this graph, it kind of goes up to an extreme value, quite low, up again, down, up, and so on. And kind of like, I don't know, like gradually trends down and gradually moves up. And the reason for this is also the shape itself is like quite smooth, something of like a sine wave. But anyways, the reason of that is because I thought if this is a child, I kind of want the inflections to be very abrupt, very kind of sharp, but not in a way that's like harsh to the ear. So it kind of needs to linger on some parts. And just generally have this kind of like upward trend. So you can see from the beginning here, it goes up, goes down, goes up again, goes down, goes up a little bit. And then, yeah, there's just a lot of like upward inflection that keeps happening throughout the processing of the original file. Yeah, that results in this. yeah, so then with that done, I just added a bit of overdrive, and that just brings back a lot of the higher frequencies, makes them stand out a lot more. I think the delay is also pretty interesting, because if you set delay to these lower values, like really, really short delay times, 15.2 milliseconds, we'll hear it more if you put it. It adds this kind of metallic texture, which sounds really cool to me. But again, these last two just need to color the sound a bit more than when it's straight from Manipulator. So I don't need it to be at 100%. I just need it to be anywhere from like 30% and lower. I think I settled somewhere there. But yeah, that gives it a little bit of texture while not changing too much of what I guess the sound that I wanted from Manipulator is. Then all I'm doing is putting it in a room. Probably could have been a lot less aggressive with that room, but yeah, it was what it is. And then Trash 2 by Isotope. Trash is amazing, if you don't already know. Well, it's one of my favorite distortion plugins, because it does a whole lot more than just distortions, like a multi-effects plugin. And I don't know, there's just so many things that you can do with it. Not counting like all of the customizations, it's just got a whole lot of like effects that you can play with, chains that you can mess around with to just get some interesting, I guess, color texture onto any sound that you have it on. As you can see, this is in my clips kind of folder in Ableton, so it's affecting everything, as opposed to me doing some individual preset selection with each thing. And Trash 2 is just giving it a bit of grit. Yeah, I thought it sounded nice, so that's how it works. Okay, so then on to the individual manipulations that I can just highlight, so maybe you can get a few more ideas from this. So the first thing is that with the baby voice, I wanted to get a bit more contrast in the voice lines. So the top ones are more happy in my ears, and I needed something a bit more distressed. So I have these. Yeah, I have these kind of vocalizations where, again, I'm not doing much. I've changed the sequencer, pitch is the same. Yeah, I've just changed the sequencer so that there's a lot more edge in the voice, a lot more like panic in it. And I guess with the idea with this is, if the first Manipulator instance that I ran was like dealing with a lot of smooth inclines, I wanted the inflection in this voice to have a lot more kind of jagged declining feeling. So as you can see, it gradually goes down, and that gives that, in combination with changing the shape over here, just gives a lot more distress to the voice. And it's quite a sharp contrast, considering I'm basically using the same source files as well. So that's interesting to note. Again, also, if you don't have time, I found it really interesting to kind of splice together different sections of clips. So this one is a combination of this clip, but it's just split in half, and then I've taped it together on its ends. And yeah, that just gives me a lot of variation. I think I could have played a bit more with like taking from other clips and like inserting them midway or 3/4 in and whatnot. And you know, there's just a lot that you can kind of get from this. What I find also interesting about Manipulator is it kind of runs on a, I don't know how to say, but like a set amount of cycles, or like the sequence runs in like a set fashion. So if I nudge my clip, even with one signal or the same sample, you could nudge each of them a bit and you'd still get some more variance, which I think is pretty nifty, because sometimes you want some things to sound extremely familiar, but not exactly the same. So very useful technique, very useful plugin. Yeah, let's go on to the other voices. So for the mom, I won't go through the whole effects chain again. I'll probably just go back to Manipulator, but this is what my unprocessed voice sounds like. Also, quick aside, there is a bit of noise in the sample, but part of my cleanup process is also going into RX and just doing a bit of like cleanup, removing pops, reducing the noise that's present in the sample, just basic audio cleaning up stuff. But anyways, back to Manipulator. So with the mom, I kind of wanted the voice to be a bit more, just have a bit more experience in how it presents itself. And so the vocalizations are, me doing a lot of kind of choppy, buzzy noises. I think at one point I was just like, let me imitate a printer to the best of my memory. I don't know. I guess printers are like they're boomers as far as robots go. I guess I don't know what to say. But yeah, that was the kind of idea. I needed this voice to be a bit more stable than the baby, a lot less emotive, but still, I don't know, have a bit of vibrance to it, because in the game the character is kind of leading the baby robot throughout the area. So it needed to kind of be playful, but still an adult sort of figure. So to do that, I guess first things first, the pitch is lowered by 3 semitones over here. I have my sequence. This one isn't important at all. I was just experimenting, I think. Anyways, I have my sequence over here, and again, just trying to hit the emotive outline that I had for myself on what this character needs to represent. So it's pretty stable, has a little bit of peaks and valleys here and there, but for the most part, it's still trying to maintain this air of being an adult, someone that's experienced and doesn't react as emotively as a child might. Yeah, I think, in this, I'm also kind of using the harmonics property and the ratio property. So the way this works in Manipulator is harmonics is kind of like frequency shifting. And I'm just using the sequencer to modulate that part of the signal. You can see on the pitch, I'm not doing as much modulation as in the baby. The baby was like set to 100%. This one's only set to negative 37.5. So it's decreasing the pitch. I think the baby was increasing. Anyways, on the ratio then, if harmonics is the frequency shifting, ratio is kind of the multiplier of the frequency shift. So this one is set quite high. If you can think of like a compressor, it has that ratio knob that determines how much gain reduction is applied per how many, oh man, I'm gonna mess this up. But yeah, in a compressor, when a signal goes above a certain level, the reduction that occurs with the ratio is equivalent to what you set it as. So if you have a ratio of 2 to 1, it'll be reduced for every decibel over the threshold in a compressor. 2 decibels of reduction will be applied, something like that. It sounds good. I think is the best rationalization I can give. But yeah, that's the major part of the mom's voice. The other thing, however, is Graylon, which is a free plugin. and I'm using this as a pitch correction tool. I've also specifically chosen which pitches I wanted to hit, and this is still keeping in mind the thematic of how I wanted the voice to kind of play out. So I wanted a voice that is kind of like stable. The baby doesn't have any auto pitch correction because I want those kind of breaks in the voice. I want it to be, like I said, very kind of emotive, all over the place, not hitting the right note all the time. But for the mom droid, I wanted there to be more stability in the voice, and so I set up this pitch correction specific set of keys and whatnot. There's also pitch shifting pitch shifting by -6 semitones, just reducing the pitch of the voice, and I have the pitch correction set to full. And to be honest, in the individual samples, I don't think you will hear it quite well. But I think kind of psychoacoustically, you will kind of feel the difference, because the pitch correction will happen over, multiple files. And if you contrast this with the baby, you can almost feel, as opposed to hear. I think you can hear it a bit more with the baby voice, but you can definitely feel more spikes and like inconsistencies, instability in the voice in comparison to the mom. So yeah, that's how that works. I think final thing to mention is that I rendered all of this and bounced out two kind of versions. And this lower version over here, because I felt like this voice by itself could use a bit more texture, especially like in the lower register. Or I think they're swapped. Anyways, I just wanted a bit more texture in the voice, and so I kind of rendered out two files, I think with the sample shifting technique I mentioned earlier. And what this kind of serves to do is accentuate how the vocalization is delivered by just giving a bit more, I don't know, it's kind of like almost like vocal doubling, but then the second voice is like completely different. And you can see over here that I've reduced the gain by 9 decibels, so it's not something that is supposed to be like heard inherently or heard equally with the original voice, but it's just supposed to like and bring out an added dimension to when you hear the vocalization delivered. Also, you can see here, sometimes it kind of just cuts out halfway or is introduced like late into the sample. Yeah, and I think it adds a nice dimension to the voice that I was going for. So that's that for the mom. Okay, and then the final two droids. Let's see. So I think these ones were interesting because I introduced this thing called beat repeat, but we'll get to that. Here's what they sound like. And this is what it sounds like unprocessed. Okay, so then just going into the thematics of this droid real quick, is this droid is, or rather these two droids, are scattered around the map, and they're in this kind of broken down one location state. or they occupy one location and they're kind of malfunctioning. And so one is nice and one is mean in their speech, and I wanted to kind of emulate that through my initial vocalizations. So to me, a nice droid would, I don't know, it has this kind of feeling of being like soft and slow whenever it's delivering or trying to speak to someone. It's not trying to, there's no like um, haste in its voice or like excitement or any kind of, upbeat kind of emotion. It's just very, kind of dragging a bit, hanging around. So that's how I decided to deliver it. So into Manipulator, um, because the droids are malfunctioning, I felt like they needed very extreme inflections in the voice. So for that, I set up this sequencer. I'll mention as well that for the sequences that you set up, like there's no right or wrong way to do this. I think just kind of play with it, use your ear, just figure shit out as you go. That's what I did, anyways. And yeah, you can see over here the formant of the vocalization is also being modulated by the sequencer. Yeah, that's what it sounds like with the sequencer off. Yeah, that's how it works. Going into Greylon, I did do more specific pitch correction choices. And then what is most interesting, I think, is the beat repeat. And I won't go into specifics of it, but basically it picks up samples, or I don't know, maybe grains from the sample and repeats it as you specify with all of these different conditions. So I'm sure there's a bunch of plugins to emulate that. I think Break Tweaker by Isotope does that. I don't know any other plugins that do that though. But I think it's definitely imitatable. I think Break Tweaker might also be just give you more range of things to do as well. I know that's quite an expansive plugin. But anyways, so I think what's most important about this plugin is basically how many repeats I've set up, how much of the sample it's picking up before it plays a repeat, which is the grid size, the variation, which means that I guess the size of the size of the grids that you see, how it's being separated over here, can be changed randomly. I don't control that at all. There's a pitch, so each sample is kind of pitched by -6 semitones, and then each sample also decays as it repeats by 20%. Yeah, so that results in, or rather, it sounds like this without beat repeat. It still sounds cool, but with beat repeat. Yeah, and I think this is me just riffing on the idea that these are malfunctioning droids, so there's a lot of like misshapen chaos in their voices whenever they speak. Yeah, same with why I cut out this tiny piece of the sample over here, because I want the voice to sound broken and mangled as much as possible. Yeah, these turned out really well. I think this is also when I was a lot more comfortable with how to use Manipulator to do things. So cool. Anyways, that was the first droid. The second one, called the Ice Droid because it's so mean. said, literally no way to go wrong with these. You just gotta go for it. If you don't, if you do like a lukewarm take, you can expect a lukewarm result. So really just have fun with it, in my opinion. But anyways, I think what's interesting about the ice droid is that I basically used the same kind of chain. I just changed my vocalizations and I still got like such a varied result. Yeah, I think I did change Manipulator like a tiny bit, but because of the way I've rendered everything, I wouldn't be able to show the changes. Yeah, I think these ones are more representative of what changed. But also, the reason why these ones are mostly different is tiny bit of changes in Manipulator, and also I did more extensive work in beat repeat to make things sound a bit different, because doing exactly the same thing, just wouldn't have the same desired result, wouldn't give the same kind of freshness to this new droid. So yeah, I think that's all I can discuss. I hope that was helpful. And I guess if anyone ever makes something new with it, be sure to hit me up, because this was cool. I'm probably gonna do it again at some point, maybe refine the process, add a bit more detail. Yeah, goodbye.